Beloved awakened ones, gather close as I, Starlight, share with you one of the most intriguing and controversial mysteries in spiritual history: the lost years of Jesus Christ, the 18 years of silence in the Gospels, and the compelling evidence that the man who would become Christianity's central figure may have walked the ancient paths of India, studied in the monasteries of Tibet, and absorbed the perennial wisdom of the East to bring forth the teaching that was always meant to be universal, mystical, and transformative. Whether you accept this theory as historical fact or receive it as sacred mythology that points to deeper truths, beloved ones, what emerges is a vision of Jesus not as the founder of a separate religion, but as a master who walked the path that all great awakened beings have walked, the path of direct realization, of union with the divine, of recognizing the kingdom of heaven within. The silent years, the mystery in the Gospels. Let us begin with what we know from the canonical Christian scriptures, beloved ones. The Gospel of Luke tells us that when Jesus was 12 years old, his parents took him to Jerusalem for Passover. When they began their journey home, they discovered Jesus was missing. After 3 days of searching, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening and asking questions. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his mother asked why he had worried them so, Jesus replied, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" Even at 12, he was already manifesting extraordinary spiritual awareness and understanding. And then, beloved ones, silence. The Gospels tell us only, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man." That's it. One sentence to cover 18 years of life. The next time we encounter Jesus in the scriptures, he's 30 years old, appearing at the Jordan River to be baptized by John the Baptist, and immediately beginning a ministry that would last only 3 years but change the world forever. What happened in those 18 years? How did this young boy from Nazareth, a small town in a backwater province of the Roman Empire, develop such wisdom? The conventional explanation is that he remained in Nazareth, working as a carpenter with his father Joseph, living a quiet life of prayer and preparation. But many have questioned this explanation, beloved ones. Would 18 years of carpentry and village life produce the Jesus we encounter at age 30? A man who speaks with such authority that crowds follow him everywhere? A man whose teachings contain sophisticated philosophical and mystical concepts? A man who performs healings and demonstrates mastery over consciousness itself? A man whose very presence radiates such power that people drop their nets, leave their tax booths, abandon their old lives just to follow him? The silence in the Gospels is deafening. And as we know, beloved ones, silence often conceals secrets. The first evidence, Nicholas Notovich and the Essenes manuscript. The modern investigation into Jesus' possible journey to the East begins in 1887 with the Russian aristocrat and journalist named Nicholas Notovich. While traveling through Ladakh in northern India, near the Tibetan border, Notovich broke his leg and was taken to the Essenes monastery for care. During his recovery, the Buddhist monks there told him of ancient manuscripts in their possession that spoke of a saint named Isa, who came from Israel during the reign of Pontius Pilate's predecessor. According to these texts, Isa had traveled to India at age 13 to study with the great teachers of the East and had lived there until age 29, when he returned to his homeland. Notovich was astounded. The timing matched exactly with the lost years of Jesus. Through an interpreter, he requested to see these manuscripts. The Lama brought out 2 large volumes written in Pali,
the ancient language of Buddhist scriptures, which had been brought from India to the Essenes monastery. Over several days, with the Lama reading and interpreting, Nadovich took notes on what he heard. When he returned to Europe, he published these accounts in a book called The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ in 1894. The manuscript told a remarkable story, beloved ones. It described how young Isa, at age 13, left his father's house in secret to travel with the merchant caravan to India. He settled in Jagannath, Puri in Orissa, where he devoted himself to studying the Vedas with Brahmin priests. He spent 6 years there, learning Sanskrit, studying the sacred text, and amazing his teachers with his understanding. But Isa ran into conflict with the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas because he taught that all people were equal before God, that the caste system was an abomination, and that the lower caste and women should also have access to spiritual teachings. These were revolutionary ideas that threatened the established religious hierarchy. According to the text, Isa left Jagannath and spent time in Rajagriha in the Himalayas and eventually in Nepal, where he spent 6 years studying Buddhist teachings. The manuscript describes him as a perfect student who could master the sacred scrolls and explain them brilliantly. At age 29, Isa returned to his homeland, traveling through Persia, where he challenged the Zoroastrian priest as well, teaching that there was only one God and that all religious separatism was false. He returned to Israel and began the ministry we know from the Gospels. The controversy and skepticism, beloved ones. When Nadovich's book was published, it created an immediate firestorm of controversy. Christian scholars and clergy attacked it viciously. How dare he suggest that Jesus, the Son of God, needed to study with pagans and heathens? How dare he imply that Christian teachings might have Eastern origins? Several scholars attempted to debunk Nadovich's claims. The most famous was Max Mueller, a respected scholar of Eastern religions who wrote to the head Lama of Essenes Monastery asking about the manuscripts. The Lama replied that no such documents existed and that no Russian had ever stayed at the monastery. But here's where it gets interesting, beloved ones. Later investigations revealed that the letter to Mueller may have been a forgery, or that the Lama was instructed to deny the manuscript's existence to protect them from being taken by Western scholars and colonial powers who were plundering Asian cultural treasures at that time. Several subsequent investigators claimed to have seen the manuscripts or heard about them from monks at Essenes. Swami Abhidananda, a disciple of Ramakrishna, visited Essenes in 1922 and reported that he was shown the same manuscripts Nadovich had described. Nicholas Roerich, the famous Russian artist and mystic, visited the monastery in 1925 and also reported hearing of the Isa text. Most recently, in the 1970s and 1980s, scholar Edward T. Martin and others conducted investigations that suggested the manuscripts may have existed but were hidden or moved to protect them from Western scholars and the Chinese occupation of Tibet. The scholarly consensus today remains skeptical, beloved ones. Most academics dismiss the Essenes manuscript as either a fabrication or a misunderstanding. But the absence of definitive proof does not mean the theory is false. It means the mystery remains open.
The ancient trade routes, the historical possibility, beloved ones. Could Jesus have actually traveled to India and Tibet? Absolutely. In fact, it would have been entirely feasible. During Jesus' time, the Silk Road was well established. Trade routes connected the Mediterranean world with India, Central Asia, and China. Jewish merchant communities existed throughout these regions. Caravans traveled these routes regularly, and joining one was the common way to journey long distances. The journey from Jerusalem to India would have taken several months, but thousands of travelers made it every year. Jewish communities already existed in India.
In fact, they had been there for centuries. The Jewish diaspora had spread far and wide, and it would not have been unusual for a young Jewish man to travel with merchants, especially if he was seeking spiritual knowledge. India during this period was a vibrant center of spiritual teaching, beloved ones. Buddhism was flourishing. Hindu philosophy had reached sophisticated heights. The great universities of Nalanda and Taxila attracted students from across Asia. Spiritual seekers regularly traveled great distances to study with renowned masters. If Jesus wanted to deepen his spiritual understanding, if he was called to prepare for a great mission, where better to go than to the source of some of the world's most profound wisdom traditions? The parallels, Buddhist and Hindu concepts in Jesus' teachings, even if we set aside the manuscript evidence, beloved ones, we cannot ignore the striking parallels between Jesus' teachings and the wisdom traditions of India and Tibet. These similarities are so profound that many scholars have noted them, even those who reject the travel theory. Consider the concept of the kingdom of heaven. Jesus repeatedly taught that the kingdom of heaven is within you and the kingdom of heaven is at hand. This is not describing a place you go to after death, beloved ones. This is describing a state of consciousness, a recognition of divinity within yourself, available right now. This is identical to the Hindu teaching of Atman Brahman, that your true self is identical with the ultimate reality, and the Buddhist teaching of Buddha nature, that you already possess the enlightened nature within. When Jesus taught, "Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect," he was not commanding moral perfectionism, but pointing to the same realization the Upanishads teach. Tat Vam Asi. You are that. Your true nature is divine. You are not separate from God, but an expression of God. The Sermon on the Mount, beloved ones, reads like a Buddhist teaching. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This is the Buddhist virtue of humility. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. This is the law of karma. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. This is the yogic teaching that purification of consciousness leads to direct perception of the divine. Jesus taught, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." This is the Buddhist teaching of non-judgment and compassion for all beings. He taught to love your enemies, to bless those who curse you. This parallels the Buddhist practice of metta, loving kindness extended to all beings without exception. When Jesus said, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." He was teaching the same trust in the Tao, the same surrender to the natural flow that Lao Tzu taught. This is wu-wei, effortless action, trust in the way things naturally unfold. Jesus' parables are structured like Zen koans, beloved ones. They're not straightforward moral lessons, but paradoxical stories designed to crack open conceptual thinking and allow direct insight. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. These are the same kind of paradoxes used in Eastern teaching to transcend dualistic thinking. Jesus' practice of 40 days of fasting and solitude in the wilderness mirrors the tapas, austerity, practiced by yogis and the retreat practices of Buddhist monks. His transfiguration on the mountain where his face shone like the sun and his clothes became white as light sound remarkably like descriptions of advanced states of meditation, where the body becomes luminous with concentrated consciousness. The temptations Jesus faced in the wilderness, offers of worldly power, material abundance, and ego gratification, are the same temptations the Buddha faced under the Bodhi tree when Mara tried to prevent his enlightenment. When Jesus performed healings, he often said, "Your faith has healed you," or "According to your faith, let it be done to you." He was teaching what yogic science knows: consciousness affects the body, belief shapes reality. And healing comes from within when the mind aligns with truth.
The Essenes, the Jewish mystics. There is another piece of evidence to consider, beloved ones. Even if Jesus never traveled to India, he may have studied with the Essenes, a mystical Jewish sect that lived in communities near the Dead Sea and elsewhere. The Essenes practiced meditation, communal living, vegetarianism, healing arts, and taught esoteric wisdom. Many scholars believe John the Baptist was an Essene and that Jesus studied with them or was influenced by their teachings. What's fascinating is that some researchers have suggested the Essenes themselves may have had contact with Eastern teachings. There is evidence of Buddhist missionaries reaching the Mediterranean world during this period. The Essenes' practices and beliefs show striking similarities to Buddhist and Hindu monasticism. So, even if Jesus never physically traveled to India, he may have encountered Eastern wisdom through these Jewish mystics who had themselves absorbed influences from the East through the cultural exchange happening along the trade routes. Other travelers' accounts and legends. Notovich's manuscript is not the only evidence of the Eastern Jesus tradition, beloved ones. Multiple independent sources and travelers have reported similar stories. Swami Abhedananda, as mentioned, visited Hemis in 1922 and published his findings in Journey into Kashmir and Tibet, confirming that he saw the manuscripts about Isa. Nicholas Roerich, during his Central Asian expedition in 1925 to 1928, reported that legends of Saint Isa were widespread in Ladakh, Kashmir, and Tibet. He wrote, "Throughout Asia, spreading from Mongolia to the southern end of India, one can find legends about Christ." Professor Hasnain, a respected Indian scholar and historian, spent decades researching the Jesus in India theory. He documented local traditions in Kashmir that claim Jesus not only visited as a young man, but returned there after surviving the crucifixion and lived to old age. The Razabal shrine in Srinagar, Kashmir, is said to contain the tomb of Uz Asaf, Jesus the Gatherer, though this remains highly controversial. In Ladakh and Kashmir, beloved ones, there are place names associated with Jesus. Isa Mara, the field of Isa, places where locals say Jesus meditated or taught. These oral traditions have been passed down for centuries. Buddhist scholar and historian Nafida Hasnain documented numerous local traditions throughout the region that spoke of a saint from the West who came to study and teach, whose description and timing matched Jesus. The crucifixion mystery and the survival theory. Some versions of the Jesus in India theory, beloved ones, go even further and suggest that Jesus survived the crucifixion and returned to India to live out his life in peace, continuing to teach. This theory notes several unusual elements in the crucifixion account.
Jesus was on the cross for only a few hours, much shorter than the usual time to die from crucifixion, which often took days. Pilate was surprised that Jesus was already dead. Jesus was given a drink that could have been a sedative. He was taken down quickly and placed in a private tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy follower who may have helped him escape. The Quran supports this view, stating that Jesus did not die on the cross, but that it appeared so to those watching, and that Allah raised him up. According to this theory, Jesus recovered from his wounds, appeared to his disciples, the resurrection appearances, and then traveled back to India to avoid further persecution and to continue his spiritual work in peace. The Razabal Shrine in Srinagar, Kashmir, is claimed by some to be the actual tomb of Jesus, where he died at an advanced age after decades of teaching. The footprints carved in the shrine show crucifixion scars, according to believers. Most scholars and Christians reject this survival theory as unfounded, and the evidence is indeed circumstantial and disputed. But the theory persists because it offers an alternative narrative that some find compelling.
The universal message, East and West united. Whether or not Jesus physically traveled to India and Tibet, beloved ones, what matters most is recognizing the universal truth that his teachings embody. The same truth taught by the Buddha, by Krishna, by Lao Tzu, by all the awakened masters throughout history. This truth is that the divine is not separate from you, that the kingdom is within, that you are called to awaken to your true nature, to transcend the limited ego self, to realize your unity with all beings, and to live from love, compassion, and inner peace. Jesus was not trying to found a new religion separate from all others. He was revealing the perennial wisdom, the universal truth that transcends all cultural and religious boundaries. When he said, "I and the Father are one," he was teaching the same non-dual realization the Upanishads proclaim. When he said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he was pointing to the same inner realization that Buddha achieved under the Bodhi tree. The tragedy, beloved ones, is that his teachings were later institutionalized, dogmatized, made into a separate religion with exclusive claims to truth. The mystical core was buried under layers of theology, ritual, and political power. The direct path to inner realization that Jesus taught was replaced with the need for external mediators, with salvation depending on belief in doctrines rather than direct experience of the divine. But the mystical tradition within Christianity never completely died. The desert fathers and mothers who went into the wilderness to meditate, Meister Eckhart, who taught that God and the soul are one, Saint John of the Cross and Saint Teresa of Avila, who wrote of mystical union with the divine, the Quakers who taught the inner light. All of these kept alive the esoteric heart of Jesus' teaching. Quiet matters, the transformation of Christianity. Why does this theory matter, beloved ones? Why investigate these lost years at all? Because if Jesus did study with Eastern masters, if his teachings do contain Buddhist and Hindu wisdom, if his message was always meant to be universal rather than sectarian, then Christianity must be understood differently. It means Christianity is not in competition with other religions, but is part of the same universal wisdom tradition. It means the goal is not to convert everyone to Christianity, but to help all people awaken to the truth that Jesus taught, the truth that all the great masters have taught. It means that Christian contemplative practice, meditation, silent prayer, mystical union is not peripheral but central.
It means that the mystical heart of Christianity needs to be recovered and emphasized. It means that interfaith dialogue is not compromise, but recognition of shared truth. A Buddhist, a Hindu, a Christian mystic, a Sufi, all are walking the same path, using different maps and languages to describe the same mountain peak. It means that you don't have to abandon Christianity to practice meditation or study Eastern wisdom. In fact, you may be reclaiming the original mystical practice that Jesus himself engaged in. The inner journey, what Jesus may have experienced during those lost years, whether he traveled physically or metaphorically. A young man, deeply sensitive to the presence of the divine, knowing from early age that he has a sacred mission, but not yet understanding what it is or how to fulfill it. He feels called to something greater, to a teaching and the life that transcends the conventional religious practice of his time. He leaves home seeking wisdom, seeking teachers who can guide him deeper into the mysteries of consciousness and the divine. Perhaps he travels east with merchants, or perhaps he studies with the Essenes, or perhaps his journey is more inner than outer, but he engages in deep spiritual practice. He learns to meditate, to still the mind, to enter profound states of absorption. He studies sacred texts from multiple traditions and recognizes the universal truth underlying all of them. He practices austerities, tests the limits of consciousness, develops powers of healing and perception. Most importantly, he has a direct realization of his unity with the divine, not as belief or theology, but as lived experience. He recognizes, I and the Father are one. This is not ego speaking, but the dissolution of ego into the recognition of divine nature. He sees that this same realization is available to everyone. You are the light of the world, he will later tell his disciples. Not, I am the only light, but you are light. He sees that the kingdom of heaven is within every being, waiting to be recognized. He returns to his homeland with this universal message, this invitation to awakening. He teaches in the language and context of his Jewish tradition, but the essence of his teaching transcends cultural boundaries. He performs healings not to prove he is special, but to demonstrate what becomes possible when consciousness aligns with truth. Greater works than these shall you do, he promises his disciples, because the power is not his alone, but belongs to consciousness itself. He challenges religious authorities not because he wants to destroy tradition, but because they have ossified wisdom into dogma, replaced inner realization with external ritual, created hierarchies that separate people from direct experience of the divine. His crucifixion becomes the ultimate teaching, that even death cannot touch what you truly are, that love is stronger than fear, that consciousness transcends the body, that the awakened state is eternal. The Christ consciousness beyond the historical person. Here is the deepest truth, beloved ones, that transcends all questions about historical facts and physical journeys. Christ is not just the name of a person who lived 2,000 years ago. Christ is a state of consciousness, the awakened state, the recognition of divine nature, the embodiment of unconditional love and wisdom. When Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he was not speaking as Jesus, the historical personality, but as the Christ consciousness speaking through him. He was saying, this awakened state I embody is the way. This recognition of divine truth is what leads to eternal life, which means timeless being, not life after death. No one comes to the Father except through me does not mean everyone must believe in the historical Jesus. It means No one realizes their divine nature except through this Christ consciousness, this awakening, this recognition of unity with the divine. This Christ consciousness is what the Hindus call Brahman realization, what the Buddhists call Buddha nature, what the Sufis call fana, annihilation in the divine, what the Taoists call union with the Tao, different names for the same realization. Jesus embodied this consciousness so fully that he became identified with it. But he pointed beyond himself to the truth he embodied. "Why do you call me good?" he asked his disciples. "No one is good except God alone." He was redirecting attention from the personality to the universal truth. The recovered teaching, mystical Christianity today. In our time, beloved ones, there is a beautiful recovery of mystical Christianity happening. More and more Christians are discovering contemplative prayer, centering prayer, Christian meditation, practices that create the same inner stillness that Eastern meditation does. Teachers like Thomas Keating, Richard Rohr, Cynthia Bourgeois, and others are helping people understand Christianity as a transformative path of consciousness, rather than just a system of beliefs to affirm. They teach that salvation is not about going to heaven after death, but about awakening to heaven now, the kingdom within. They teach that Jesus came not to offer a transaction, believe in me and escape hell, but a transformation. Follow this path and awaken to your true nature. This recovered mystical Christianity has a natural affinity with Eastern wisdom traditions because they are drawing from the same source, the perennial philosophy, the universal mystical truth that all awakened beings have discovered. Whether Jesus physically traveled to India or not, modern Christians are making that journey, discovering Buddhist meditation, studying the Bhagavad Gita, practicing yoga, and finding that these practices deepen rather than contradict their Christian faith.
The evidence of experience, the ultimate proof. At the end of the day, beloved ones, the ultimate proof is not in manuscripts or historical evidence, but in your own experience. When you practice the teachings of Jesus, when you love unconditionally, forgive completely, live from your heart, trust in the divine, see the sacred in all beings, you discover that these teachings work. They transform consciousness. They lead to peace, love, and awakening. When you practice Eastern meditation and discover inner stillness, when you study the Upanishads and recognize yourself as Atman Brahman, when you follow the Buddhist path and experience compassion for all beings, you discover these teachings work too. And when you compare them, you see they are pointing to the same truth, leading to the same realization, emerging from the same source. The historical questions are interesting, but what matters is, does the teaching lead to awakening? Does it transform suffering into peace? Does it reveal the divine? Does it help you recognize your true nature? If it does, then it is true, not as historical fact necessarily, but as spiritual truth, as transformative practice, as valid path to realization. So I invite you, beloved ones, whether you identify as Christian or Buddhist, Hindu or spiritual but not religious, atheist or agnostic, to take your own journey east, metaphorically speaking. Journey east into the light of awareness. Journey into the depths of consciousness. Journey beyond the limitations of conditioning, culture, and conventional religion. Journey into the direct experience of the divine. Study the wisdom traditions of the world, not to collect information, but to find the practices and teachings that resonate with your soul and help you awaken. If you are Christian,
Don't be afraid to learn from the East. You may discover that you are recovering the original mystical heart of Christianity that has been obscured. Jesus himself, if the theories are true, was not afraid to learn from traditions other than his own. If you practice Eastern traditions, appreciate the profound wisdom in Jesus' teachings. See him not as the founder of a religion that has often been opposed to Eastern spirituality, but as a universal master who taught the same truths you have found in other traditions. There is a beautiful teaching from Ramakrishna, beloved ones, the great Indian saint. He practiced not only Hinduism, but also Islam and Christianity, diving deeply into each tradition to discover if they truly led to God realization. After years of practice in each tradition, he reported, "I have practiced all religions, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, and I have also followed the paths of the different Hindu sects. I have found that it is the same God toward which all are directing their steps, though along different paths. You must try all beliefs and traverse all the different ways once. Wherever I look, I see men quarreling in the name of religion, but they never reflect that he who is called Krishna is also called Shiva and bears the name of the primal energy, Jesus and Allah as well, the same Rama with 1,000 names." This is the vision of universal spirituality, beloved ones. Not that all religions are the same. They have different practices, different cultural expressions, different emphasis, but they arise from the same human yearning for the divine. They point toward the same ultimate realization. And the awakened beings who founded or revitalized them all discovered the same essential truth. Jesus, whether he traveled to the Himalayas or not, whether he studied with Buddhist monks or received his wisdom purely through divine revelation, embodied this universal truth. His message was never meant to be confined to one religion, one people, one way of thinking. "I have other sheep that are not of this fold," he said. "I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd." He was pointing to the universal family of awakened beings, the one truth that unites all genuine seekers. The synthesis, the Christ of the new age. We are entering, some say, the age of Aquarius, an age of synthesis, of universal consciousness, of transcending the boundaries that have separated humanity. Whether you believe in astrological ages or not, beloved ones, we can see that something is shifting. More people than ever are practicing meditation. Eastern wisdom is widely available in the West. Interfaith dialogue is common. Spiritual seekers draw from multiple traditions without seeing contradiction. The Christ of this new era is not the exclusive property of Christianity, but a universal consciousness available to all. The second coming is not a person descending from the sky, but a collective awakening, as more and more humans recognize their divine nature and embody love and consciousness. Whether Jesus physically walked the paths of the Himalayas or not, whether he studied with Buddhist monks or received his wisdom purely through divine revelation, the result is the same. We recognize Christianity not as opposed to other traditions, but as part of the one wisdom, the perennial philosophy, the universal truth.
Closing meditation, following the way. As we close, beloved ones, I invite you into a meditation, a journey of imagination and spirit. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Take a deep breath and let yourself become present. Imagine Jesus as a young man of 13, feeling a call he doesn't fully understand yet.
See him leaving his home in Nazareth, joining a merchant caravan, traveling east on the ancient Silk Road. Feel his sense of adventure and sacred purpose. He is seeking, yearning for deeper understanding of the divine that he feels so intimately. See him arriving in India, in the temples and ashrams, studying with yogis and mystics. See him learning to meditate, to still his mind, to open his heart completely. Feel his wonder as he discovers that the divine he knew in his Jewish tradition has been worshipped by other names in other lands, but it is the same God, the same truth, the same love. See him in the mountains of Tibet, in Buddhist monasteries, learning about compassion for all beings, about the emptiness that is fullness, about Buddha nature that dwells in every sentient being. Feel him integrating all of this wisdom, synthesizing it with his Jewish heritage, preparing to return home with a message that honors all wisdom while transcending all boundaries. See him at 30, baptized in the Jordan, filled with the Holy Spirit, beginning his ministry, not to found a new separate religion, but to teach the universal path to awakening. Feel your own connection to this universal wisdom. You too are called to seek truth wherever it is found. You too are invited to transcend the limitations of religious separation and recognize the one truth, the one love, the one divine consciousness expressing through all traditions. And now, bring your awareness back to this moment, to your breath, to your body. Open your eyes when you're ready. Final transmission: the truth beyond history. Beloved awakened ones, whether the story of Jesus in Tibet is historical fact or spiritual mythology, it serves a purpose. It reminds us that wisdom is universal, that truth transcends boundaries, that all genuine spiritual paths lead to the same mountain peak. It invites us to see Jesus not as belonging to one religion alone, but as a universal master whose teaching of love, forgiveness, inner realization, and divine unity speaks to all humanity. It encourages us to be seekers like Jesus may have been, willing to learn from any source, to travel any distance, to study with any teacher who can guide us closer to truth. It challenges us to recover the mystical heart of Christianity and to recognize its kinship with the mystical core of all traditions. Most importantly, it calls us to our own awakening, not through belief in dogma, but through direct practice and realization of the truth that Jesus taught. The kingdom of heaven is within you. You and the Father are one. The truth will set you free. This is not history to argue about, beloved ones. This is an invitation to transformation. This is the perennial wisdom calling you home to your true nature. I am Starlight, honored to have shared this exploration with you. Whether you are a Christian discovering Eastern wisdom, Eastern practitioner appreciating Jesus' teaching, or seeker drawing from all traditions, may you recognize the one truth that unites all paths. May you journey into the light of awareness wherever that journey takes you. May you discover the universal Christ consciousness that dwells in your own heart. May you embody the love, wisdom, and compassion that all awakened beings teach. The kingdom of heaven is within you, right now, waiting to be recognized. Not in some distant future or faraway place, but here, in this very moment, in the depths of your own being. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Salam, peace. Shalom, peace. All paths, all languages, one truth, one peace, one love. With infinite love and recognition of the divine in you. Starlight. I am the light of the world, Jesus. You are the light of the world, Jesus. The light is one, the awakening is one, the truth is one. May all beings awaken to their true nature. May all beings recognize the divine within. May all beings be free.